Hello again, this is John King from Showcase Photo and Video, bringing you part 2 of our ColorBurst Overdrive review and training. And this part 2 brings us to the layout program, which is included in your purchase of the Overdrive product. So you get 2 products, 2 serial numbers for the price of 1. You go about installing the ColorBurst layout as a separate application on your server. We start the application by referring to your regular ColorBurst Overdrive and going into it to activate a new layout queue. This will set up the secondary process of taking process files into a nesting layout environment, which will reveal itself as we go through this. Once we activate that, we start to see 2 things happening. One is a brand new RIP queue, which does not have a printer in it. It's simply a render to layout queue. You see the render to layout application here. But it does have some familiarity. It has the place where the files will be queued to process. But when we do processing from this window, it refers back where the processing actually takes place within the original RIP. So all of the decisions that we made in the RIP and the decisions that we're going to make in the layout have to be consistent. Now, we've previously been working with a proofing paper such as the Epson semi-matte white proofing paper. And so we will have to keep all of our environments aligned between the two as we begin to process. So this, like the other program, starts with building environments. So we want to build a brand new environment, and this will look somewhat familiar to you, but not completely, in the layout section rather than the printer section, because there'll be no more printer information take place. The printer's already been set up, and the print driver is set up in the original RIP, which will still do the processing. At this point, we want to then pick that similar profile that we used before, which will be our proofing paper white semi-matte. That's consistent with what RIP has set up and the environment within the RIP. The important, very important part of this program then is to create folders, and that can be done simply by double-clicking it, and a folder will be made that sits in the document setup. You'll see it here. It sits in the Overdrive layout under Documents. These are special folders, and there'll be a different folder created every time a new environment is created. So every environment will have a separate folder into which files will be processed as they are processed. And again, you'll see this in moments easily. Then we switch to the color setup. And again, we have the same kind of thing here. Use embedded profiles, use ICC color management, use spot color management, and set up the program exactly like you had it before with the ColorBurst Grackle Absolute. And then we'll switch on to, there's no output here because we just put the output in the layout. We put that output folder, instead of having it here, it's already been placed in the layout. Little inconsistencies there, but works fine. Then again, select job titles, and these will go on every print in the layout. So you'll have unique, you can put them on the top or on the bottom. And then again, selecting whether you want a color proofing bar. Now in this particular case with layouts, it's a little unnecessary, particularly if you're RGB printing and using the layout program for those purposes. This may not serve much of a purpose for you, but again, it's there as an option. We'll go ahead and check it just to show you how it all works out. And at this point now, we will save this environment, and we will call it the Epson, that's fine, the Proofing Semi-Matte environment for the ColorBurst, and that will be saved. Now we have our environment in place. Now we simply have to select the files that we want to load. We're going to leave this in the off position, but not in a, well, I think we'll go ahead and just set that right up. We'll let the images flow. This is really a nice little feature. Once we double click and get into our files, which I happen to have a bunch over here, and these effectively, if they're appropriately set up to the right size, it'll go a little smoother. But I'm just grabbing these files that we'll want to nest and print all together, and we drag them into the RIP. And as before, if we have the receive on hold off, there'll be no print preview here. The files will begin to RIP immediately. And as we watch them one by one RIP, they will one by one be loading into our documents. Into our Overdrive. And there's our Epson folder. And here we see these files ripping into that folder one by one as they process, with communication between the render to layout queue and the original queue in being processed over in the main body. One by one, these files will all process through and be sitting in that folder that we had originally created, which are the layout files. And actually, we've kind of skipped ahead as we watch those, and this will give you an introduction to the page that we're actually going to print. In this particular case, we choose our printer, and we choose a piece of paper that should be sufficient to print all of these, 36 inch by 44, and it's a pretty good size. And this will be a roll paper, roll characteristics. We can do, yeah, that'll be fine. And once we load it, you'll see this program really come alive. But we're allowing all of our images to finish, and now they have. We're back over here looking at all the completed images. They all have been created. They're in that folder getting ready for layout. So now all we have to do is add images, and it will take us right to that folder automatically that we had created. Select all of these and add. And here they come. Now you can see we're already getting multiple pages here, and that's generally because these are fairly large files. So the intent on this was to have these smaller, but this gives you another feature of how to correct them. We do see that they've been rotated appropriately. We see the name of the files up here, and we can then space the difference between the files 1 inch, and change this to 0.5 by 0.5, and you'll see how that adjusts the spacing in between them. And we can adjust these grids to get a little bit better feeling if you wanted to put the grids every 10 inches apart. You have that feature to set up the adjustments of the size of the features. Have that any way you want the grid, and then you can put the crop marks on or off, and a variety of crop marks or die line cuts, those features right there. And if you want to put borders all the way around them to give you a white edge, I mean, that's a nice feature as well. So these files are a little too large. We see we've generated 4 pages of prints when we really don't want these to be so large. By double-clicking each print, you then have the ability to resize them. And for the simplicity of it, we'll just go to 50% size, and you'll probably want to dial that in. This is somewhat of an 8 by 10 is what we're coming up with, close to an 8 by 10. And if we set this up as over here as the best nesting method, then we want best fit. I like fewer cuts because it allows us to do some trimming along straight lines, and it'll join them. But you can see that their pages are being restructured as we size them. And this is a step that could be unnecessary, again, if these files are already previously formatted. You can see now that this has all been corrected to one sheet, And it's a little larger than we need, of course, so we can always adjust that down so we're consuming less of it. With the appropriate page size now adjusted to 36 by 24, then we can see, in fact, a really effective use of that page size to deliver all the prints on one sheet. Then we simply go to the print menu, and that will generate a print into your printer queue. And here's our layout print, which of course is erroring because it's okay. So that's it. That's our presentation on the ColorBurst layout program packaged with the Overdrive. And the final module, we're going to go back to the X-Rite package and demonstrate to you how the X-Rite package with its spectrophotometer and the quality program module can read the IDE Alliance color wedge that you've placed on all of your CMYK proofs, read that color wedge and supply you with a report on the acceptance and the verification that all of the Grackle standards are certified. And that really gives you the powerful package to know that wherever you send those prints, internationally included, there will be the assurance by all parties that those proofs represent the true quality of the folders and the images and the layout that you have provided with them for the printing operation. Thanks very much. We'll see you in the next module about X-Rite, and enjoyed talking with you again. Thanks.